Eric was a man of diligence and ambition. At only 35, he had built his clothing brand, Trend Elite, from the ground up, transforming it into a household name. His days were consumed with meetings, designs, and factory visits, but his evenings were reserved for his wife, Diane. Diane had once been the love of his life, the one who inspired him to work harder and dream bigger. Diane possessed a beauty that was both striking and timeless. Her almond-shaped eyes, a warm hazel hue, seemed to sparkle with secrets and emotions she rarely shared. They were framed by long, dark lashes that curled naturally, giving her gaze an almost hypnotic allure. Her skin was smooth and radiant, a rich caramel tone that seemed to glow under any light. She had high cheekbones that accentuated the symmetry of her face, and her full lips, often painted with soft shades of rose or crimson, carried a natural pout that drew attention effortlessly. Her hair, a cascade of thick, glossy curls, fell just below her shoulders, perfectly framing her delicate features. Whether left loose or tied in an elegant updo, it always seemed to fall just right, as if styled by the wind itself. Diane's figure was equally captivating, slim yet curvaceous, with an elegance that spoke of effortless grace. She moved with a natural poise, her steps measured and deliberate, commanding attention without demanding it. Her voice, soft and melodic, added to her charm, carrying a warmth that could make even the coldest conversation feel intimate. Diane had a knack for drawing people in, her laughter light and infectious, her presence magnetic. But perhaps what made her beauty truly unforgettable was the way she carried herself, confident yet approachable, with a mystique that left everyone wanting to know more. But as the years passed, Diane began to crave something Eric couldn't seem to provide: undivided attention. Though Eric made every effort to show his love, gifting her with thoughtful presents, cooking for her on weekends, and listening to her dreams, she always seemed distant. One afternoon, while out shopping, Diane bumped into an old flame, Marcus. He was as charming as ever, his confidence still intoxicating. Marcus had an undeniable presence, the kind that turned heads as soon as he entered a room. His tall, athletic frame exuded strength and confidence, his sharp jawline accentuated by a perfectly trimmed beard. His deep, honey-brown eyes held a smoldering intensity, making anyone feel like they were the sole focus of his attention. He moved with a natural grace, his posture straight, his steps deliberate. His voice was low and smooth, the kind that lingered in the air long after he spoke, with a faint, teasing edge that hinted at mischief. Diane couldn't help but notice the subtle details, how his crisp shirt hugged his broad shoulders, the way his cologne mixed with the warmth of his skin, or the faint dimple that appeared when he smiled. He carried himself with the kind of self-assuredness that Eric, for all his dedication and love, lacked in her eyes. When Marcus leaned in closer during their conversations, his warmth seemed to envelop her, his scent a mix of musk and cedar, triggering a rush of nostalgia and desire. Every accidental brush of his hand against hers sent shivers down her spine, igniting a spark she hadn't felt in years. Diane told herself it was harmless at first, just old feelings resurfacing. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. There was something magnetic about Marcus, something dangerous that she could not resist. A harmless coffee date turned into laughter and lingering gazes. Soon, Marcus began to occupy her thoughts, filling a void Eric's love no longer seemed to reach.
Marcus leans back in his chair, a sly smile playing on his lips. You haven't changed a bit, Diane. Still as stunning as ever.
Oh, please. Flattery won't get you anywhere, Marcus. Diane blushes slightly.
It's not flattery if it's the truth. You know, I almost didn't recognize you at first, but then I saw those eyes. Impossible to forget. Marcus chuckles, leaning closer.
You always were good with words. Some things never change, huh? Diane smirking, trying to appear composed.
Some things do, though, like how life pulls us apart, only to bring us back together when we least expect it. His voice softens.
Life has a funny way of doing that, doesn't it? Diane said, as her smile falters slightly.
Funny, or maybe it's fate. Either way, I'm glad it brought you here today. Marcus replies as he leans even closer, his tone teasing.
Marcus, this is just coffee. Her breath catches as his hand briefly brushes hers.
Is it? Or is it the beginning of something we both can't ignore? Marcus asked, smirking, his voice a low murmur.
Silence lingers as Diane looks away, unsure whether to resist or give in to the magnetic pull she feels toward him. One evening, Diane crossed a line she swore she never would. She met Marcus in a secluded hotel and surrendered to the passion that Eric, with all his love and care, couldn't ignite in her. She convinced herself it was a one-time mistake, but the thrill was addictive, and she began sneaking off regularly to be with Marcus. Months passed, and Eric remained blissfully unaware of his wife's betrayal. He trusted her completely. One day, while sorting through paperwork in his study, Eric stumbled upon a lab report tucked carelessly among Diane's belongings. His hands trembled as he read the words, HIV positive. At first, disbelief flooded him. Diane was always careful about her health, but as the truth dawned, rage and heartbreak overtook him. Eric wasn't positive he'd had a test recently as part of a routine checkup. If Diane was infected, it could only mean one thing: she had been unfaithful. That evening, Eric confronted Diane. "I found your lab results," he said, his voice steady but cold. Diane froze, her mind racing. I was going to tell you. It's probably from you. You haven't exactly been performing well." Her attempt to shift the blame ignited something primal in Eric. "Don't you dare lie to me," he roared. "I've been faithful to you since the day we met. Who is it? Who have you been sleeping with?" Diane broke down, the weight of her guilt finally cracking her facade. "It's Marcus," she admitted, sobbing. "I didn't mean for it to happen, Eric. I was lonely and you were always too busy." Eric stared at her, his heart breaking anew. "Too busy?" he repeated. "Everything I've done every late night, every sacrifice was for us. And this is how you repay me?" Diane begged for forgiveness, but Eric couldn't bring himself to even consider it. The betrayal was too deep, the trust shattered beyond repair. "I gave you everything," he said quietly, his voice hollow. "But I can't forgive this. You didn't just betray me, you endangered my life." The divorce was swift and merciless. Diane moved out, and Eric cut all ties with her. Though the pain lingered, he channeled his heartbreak into his work, using his clothing brand as an outlet for his emotions. As for Diane, she was left to face the consequences of her choices alone, haunted by the family and love she had thrown away for fleeting moments of passion. Months turned into years, and Eric transformed his pain into purpose. His clothing brand, Trend Elite, flourished like never before, expanding internationally. The heartbreak had hardened him, but it also fueled his ambition. He became a symbol of resilience, inspiring those around him with his determination to overcome personal tragedy. But success did not heal everything. Late at night, Eric sometimes found himself replaying the betrayal, wondering if he had missed the signs. The hurt was still there, lingering beneath the surface, though he refused to let it control him. Diane, on the other hand, struggled to rebuild her life. Marcus, the man for whom she had risked everything, disappeared as soon as her diagnosis came to light. Friends distanced themselves, and whispers followed her wherever she went. She moved to a smaller apartment, her once vibrant life reduced to solitude and regret. Her diagnosis was a constant reminder of her choices. She sought therapy and joined a support group for those living with HIV, slowly learning to accept her new reality. Though she reached out to Eric once, he never responded. 2 years after the divorce, Eric attended a charity gala in support of HIV awareness. His company had partnered with the organization to design a clothing line with proceeds going to the cause. While mingling with the guests, he saw her. Diane! She stood near the back, dressed simply but elegantly, her once luminous eyes now carrying a shadow of regret. Their eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. Eric approached her, not out of affection, but curiosity. "Diane," he said, his voice neutral. "Eric," she replied, barely above a whisper. "You look, well." "I am," he said. "And you?" She hesitated. "I'm trying to be better. I've made mistakes and I'm paying for them. But I want you to know, I'm sorry, truly sorry." Her voice broke, and for the first time, Eric saw the depth of her remorse. He nodded, his expression softening just slightly. "I hope you find peace, Diane," he said before walking away. That brief interaction stayed with Eric. He realized that forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation. It didn't mean inviting her back into his life or erasing the pain she caused. It meant letting go of the bitterness that had quietly lingered in his heart. Over time, Eric found love again with someone who appreciated his dedication and matched his values. This new relationship wasn't born out of desperation, but mutual respect and understanding. As for Diane, she dedicated her life to advocacy, using her story as a cautionary tale. While she would never regain what she had lost, she found purpose in helping others avoid the same mistakes. Eric's journey proved that while forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, trust, once broken, can rarely be restored. Diane learned the hard way that fleeting passion is no substitute for true commitment. Both carried their lessons forward, their lives diverging forever yet shaped by the same fateful choices. Quick question. Have you ever been in a situation where forgiving someone felt almost impossible? How did you deal with it? Share your story in the comment below.